Please welcome to the stage our panelists for Learning from Today's Industry Leaders.
All right. Thank you all who are still here. I understand it's a big travel day for a lot of people, and it's been really nice to see so many new faces and hear from a lot of people from different countries as well here as well. So thank you to our panelists. We have Sandy Casey, who is SVP of Global Supply for Innovate MR. We have Paul Gaudette, who is the co-founder, CEO of Dig Insights. We have Olivier de Gaudemar, who is, thank you. That was the one I was going to butcher if I was going to butcher any name on here. Not good with French. Who's the principal at ClearSwell. And then we have Rob Berger, who is the EVP of Global Quantitative for Schlessinger. So thank you all. And we're really just here to have a conversation about, the industry as it is right now and kind of where we see it, moving in the future. And so to start with, I think it'd be really interesting to kind of know how you all fell into this industry. I feel like it's something that a lot of people don't know about as a career path, generally speaking, and maybe some of you did, and it was something that you wanted. But I would love to hear from you to start with about how you even began in this industry.
So I'll start. I fell upon the industry. I did not go find the industry. I was an entrepreneur focused on affinity marketing products, building products and services for highly specialized audience groups, which I then sold to a .com. And the combination of my affinity and understanding of community put me in a really good place to be able to go out and build, supply highly specialized and specialized panels, treating the panelists in different ways versus a one-size-fits-all panel. So we would slice them up and actually go out and work our communication strategies into highly targeted groups, and that's really where I started.
Yeah, I went right from school right into this industry and kind of similar, just kind of fell into it.
Okay.
Backwards, just completely dug. And I always loved in school. I took business school, so I loved strategy. I loved innovation, and everyone was like, you have to go either in accounting or finance. Both of which I was not qualified for. So I kind of did my master's in strategic management actually in France. We were just chatting about it, and loved innovation and got to with a firm that was kind of focused on innovation that really transformed into a research company. And here I am today. I love the fact that we can still chat strategies with our clients and chat about innovation. And this is kind of what the industry is about.
I don't think I fell into market research, really. I fell first into the web and the internet, and then I fell into market research. But like everybody else, I fell into it. I did not even know about it, except in college, I took some job as an interviewer. And that was the best paying job on the campus. I mean, back then, it seemed like a lot of money. It was so frustrating to spend the day being rejected. But other than that, as I said, I fell into the web, and it was 1999, and with fresh out of business school, with a buddy of mine, we just wanted to go into the web 1.1. So we quit our consultant jobs and moved to a startup, .com, which had a brilliant idea that we loved. Which was to get consumers to speak, to write opinions about products. Yeah, and there was absolutely no business model, but it raised a lot of cash. And so thankfully, we were able to survive the crash, because a few months after we joined, the crash was there. And we were in a very early employees, and my job was monetization, and I had no clue how to make this a profitable business model. And so I tried everything. I tried e-commerce, I tried advertising. Back in the day, there was no Google, so it didn't work. And finally, totally by chance, one of our clients for email marketing turned out to be a market research company. Never heard about it, a company called NFO, if anyone's familiar with it. NFO Interactive, which has gone through several iterations since then, different names. And that's how we fell into it, and we discovered with wonder the world of market research. And that's the story.
All right, 1993.
Aging yourself.
Decided to go to my grade 11 math class. I typically would have skipped that class to hang out with my friends outside of school and not get caught. But decided to go that morning to class and was sitting there with a friend of mine. It's high school, as you can imagine, nobody's paying attention to the teacher, and said, "Hey, you looking for to make some extra cash?"
It could have been
Like,
anything.
where is this conversation going? In high school, he said, "No, I work in this call center where you can show up whenever you want, as long as you show up, as long as you don't show up, 3 days a week, and they'll pay you minimum wage to call people on the phone, ask them survey questions." So took that job because I was really tired of my job working at a restaurant called Swiss Chalet, which Paul would know being Canadian, and cooking chicken in the kitchen. So I said, yeah, that sounds like a much more interesting type of job and a little less hot and sweaty than working in the kitchen. And
So you thought, yeah,
that's what I
it was
thought.
hot and sweaty in the call center.
Yeah,
too.
exactly. Well, yeah, the call center in that company was in the back of the building near where the post office for Canada had their trucks that they left running. So occasionally we'd have carbon monoxide issues in the call center, but that's where I started, and literally fell into the industry or in high school, and worked my way through all the different components of the industry, up to digital data collection in the early 2000s, and we were programming surveys on systems we had no idea what they were, and getting respondents from sources which we had no clue how they were ever collected, so probably spam. Just been in the industry literally since day one for digital sample data collection, and here today on the stage. So it's been a wild ride, but yeah, it literally starts back in high school.
Cool. And I would ask as a follow-up, so what's kept you in the industry rather than pivoting to something different?
Well, I guess since I'm at the end here, I went.
Yeah, we can go this way back.
I think just honestly the change, the constant change.
Okay.
It's never been boring. There's always a new innovation and a new methodology that's come around the corner. The consolidation has been fascinating. Again, we were mentioning NFO. They were acquired like 5 times probably since that original incarnation, and and particularly in the last 10 years, what's been going on in the sample space. We're obviously at SampleCon, so a bit more biased, but as I mentioned in the earlier days, it was just, we'll just move phone surveys online, and everyone thought, okay, this is just like the next step. But what's involved and the technological investments and investment into this part of the industry is really what's kept me on that side, and I have to say I'm thrilled that I never made the switch over to the insights side of the industry and doing the actual research, because in the early days, working in more of the operations and the data collection side was probably the less glamorous part of the industry. But I would say that today I think it is leading the industry in many ways. So I think that's what's kept me in the industry all these years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
criticizing
Yeah.
researcher.
I'm with you on that one. It's been, I think we've been very lucky. My generation, our generation, it's the same, right? Because it's been an amazing time to be in this industry. So I feel like I've been very lucky in terms of the timing, and timing is everything, right? Because you can be too early, you can be too late, and you can be too early, right? And I felt that I just graduated right at the same time, and the right opportunity were presented to me. So I was lucky to be there at the right time. I think I was extremely lucky to meet the right people. And I think I stayed for the people. Mm-hmm. In particular, in the jobs that I took, some of the jobs where I stayed a very long time, I think that what really kept me somewhere were the people I was working with, my team, my manager. I think should never underestimate the importance of a boss. I would say, one of my advice to someone new in the workforce is don't pick a company, pick a boss, yes. Right? I mean, I think that's really that makes such a difference. And so I've been very fortunate to have great colleagues, great bosses, and also this ecosystem that is it's so much fun every year to see some faces that you've seen for many years, and I think that's part of what has kept me in this industry.
Yeah, for me, it's the late night parties. This is my first time at SampleCon, and you guys are a boozy group. It's fantastic. I kind of just, echoing what Olivier was saying about the people. I think our industry has like just the fantastic people, like the whole industry. And whether you're on the insight side or the sample side, I mean, together, all of us, just genuinely really nice people in this industry. And we get to do an amazing stuff, and innovation is actually always happening a lot in this space, and it gets a lot more attention. But I'd say I've stayed in this industry because I started a company and I haven't gotten out of that industry. But also just the people are just genuinely really nice. I really like these people.
Cool.
I'd say the same thing. Thanks for reading my notes ahead of time and stealing my answers, guys. Appreciate that a lot. No, it is a people about. I have always had the philosophy of people work for people, they don't work for companies. So number one. Number two, where I am now at Innovate MR, and I get to work with Lisa Wilding Brown, who is probably one of the most generous, kind, smartest people that you get a chance to work with. And she's not here, by the way, so this is not a butt-kissing moment by any means.
We're live streaming it to her right now.
Yes. Anyways, and the other thing I think that really keeps me in this is what we do. We provide the most important information to companies around the globe. Like, we are the ones making the decisions for companies and what they're going to invest in. And it's such an important thing that we do. Like, one of the most important things for our economy. And I have such a passion for that and the quality that we have to put out there just for that alone.
Yeah, that's totally fair. So what do you think the industry isn't doing that you really wish it were? And I know sometimes it's just a bandwidth constraint, and it's like, I've been meaning to do this for a long time, or whatever it is, but where do you see the industry kind of lacking, or the opportunities, I guess? We could rephrase it in that way. Anybody? Yeah.
Where to start?
Yeah, where to start, I know.
I still think the industry moves too slow.
It's too slow.
It's just too slow. Like people still talk about mobile surveys. I'm like, what does that even mean anymore? That was like a 10 years ago conversation. You go into developing countries, they only use mobile phones. Mm-hmm. Nobody's walking around with laptops. So it's slow. It's still much too slow for the innovation and the way the world around us is advancing. And we hear from earlier the respondents, and they're talking about the way that they engage with us in surveys, and we're still doing long surveys. We're still talking about DQing or OQing people. Like, we've been talking about this for 10 years at SampleCon, and it just we are going too slow. And I think there was somebody earlier, one of the sessions was talking about, they're afraid of what is coming that is not in this room, which will just change everything that we're doing that we're not catching up on.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest risk that we're seeing on it. I think the industry just needs to speed up and stop sitting in the science.
How do you see that happening? I mean, yeah.
I think in some ways we're a bit insulated from that risk because while we are a good sized industry, we are generally small. And that in some ways is good and bad because it prevents that big player from coming in and completely disrupting what we're doing and just fixing the problem. But at the same time, it's an impediment because we can't actually seem to figure out how to do it ourselves or have the investment or the time and scale to push that.
I think there's a lot of consolidation, but not a lot of collaboration.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's a real pain point. And I think at some point in time, we actually have to leave these sessions, and the companies have to come together, set the standard, follow the standard, and trust each other to follow the standards and not let it go. We just heard 4 people that are in the panels right now telling us the problems we all know and have known forever. Mm-hmm. But we're not pushing back. But I think if we all push back on the design and we all push back on data consistency and trusting the data, we could leave here and make a real impact.
Yeah, we tend to talk about the same shit every year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
For a long time. You start the conference, it's the same thing. Maybe stop whining a bit, because we are amazing at what we do, and we provide amazing value to our clients, and we should provide amazing value to our respondents. But I think now, in the last couple of years, I think the insights industry is really getting the attention it deserves, and people are seeing the value, especially in companies, larger organizations. And I think we need to lean in on that.
So I mean, there's so much to talk about. But first of all, first point, the participants that were sitting here gave us most of the answers already. And most of these answers have been recurring every year for as long as I've been in industry. But I think that there's been some change lately. So I'm very hopeful. I think that both on the demand side and on the supply side, there have been incredible innovation, and I think it's starting to pay off. So first of all, I think that exchanges have played a very important role in developing tools that enable market forces that create the right dynamics. So what I mean by that is, in the first 10 years in this industry, I kept hearing the same thing. Oh, surveys are too long, surveys are too boring, right? And there was nothing we could do about it. But once exchanges introduced an economic benefit in having a good survey, it started to move the needle, right? And the fact that now you cannot go live with a horrible survey and expect respondents, I think it helps move the needle in directions. Too slowly, I agree.
I think it's still too slow.
Yeah,
There's
still too slow.
Plenty of horrible surveys that are being launched.
But I think it really goes in the right direction, and I'm very thankful for that. Now, it also comes with some challenges as well. I think that there are more tools that I needed for the exchanges, for the survey softwares to make the ecosystem better, but we're going there. I mean, I will let my other co-panelists speak, but I have more to talk about this.
I think we need to charge more, to be honest. I think we are continuously self-inflicting this wound on ourselves, and it's through not charging enough, which means, just again, like those respondents were saying, we're not paying them enough. Now, I'm not saying necessarily we should go down the path that we're in California, so
Right.
There's no state officials here, but yeah, that the push there to pay minimum wage exactly for respondents would have been game changing 4 or 5 times the cost probably for our clients. But in some regards, like the respondents are, without the respondents, we have nothing. And in many regards, clients and buyers still don't actually see them as the humans, like people that were up here that are actually spending time.
Okay.
Surveys for pennies on the dollar.
And Katie mentioned on the first day, why we're asking, and to some of the people who are up here were chatting about it, and you're asking me the same questions over and over at every single survey. Like, we should be well past that stage at this point.
Well, and it seems like a lot of that's happening before you even hit the survey. And that was one of the things that I guess I'd never really spent much time thinking about, but it's like, man, before they even touch my survey, they might have been in some kind of loop or something else for a good 10 minutes. I mean, trying to even qualify to get in. And I don't know how bad some of those questions were, how many times they answered the same questions multiple times. I mean, it's just kind of...
Well, the name of our cats. I mean, there's some bad questions.
Yeah. So feel free. I mean,
I want to say, so I think exchanges are just the beginning of having some plumbing, for this ecosystem, but there's some pieces that are missing. One piece, for example, is for many years, I've been on the supply side and talking to publishers, people outside of the traditional panel system who have a pool of respondents that would make it possible to expand the supply, expand the pond. There's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that are coming up with business plans which would make it possible to increase the pond, have more respondents, right? Now, the problem is that the current economics of exchanges, the way that they're currently implemented, but I think it's temporary, make us believe that supply is much larger than it is, right? And that's what leads artificially to those low CPIs, right? The reality, and I don't think you need legislation like in California to get there. I think that with the right mechanisms in place, we should be able, as buyers, to realize that we're all fishing the same pond, right? And one issue that I don't think we speak enough is the issue of survey frequency, right? If you have 90% of your completes that are coming from 2% of your respondents, then we are just artificially believing that our supply is like 10 times, 100 times bigger than it is, right? The reality is that, and I think it's because the exchanges are not there yet, right? But I think will come a point where as a buyer, you can decide, I don't want to get a respondent that's already taken 50 surveys today.
Correct.
I know I placed the bar very high, right? But, and maybe it's not 50 survey, maybe it's, all right, maybe it's reasonable to take X amount of surveys per day. I don't know. Today, we don't, as a buyer, you don't have this tool, right? So you can bid on lower price, you can bid for specific quotas, but there's nothing on frequency. But we have the tools now. You have quality tech that enables this to be measured. It's not productized yet. I think once we get there, we will realize that the pond is too small and it will provide the economics for new supplies to go in the market at probably a higher CPI.
I think the last point you said actually is the crux of the issue. I think we actually have the infrastructure. I think we actually have the technology. We have the know-how, but it's about increasing the supply. But increasing the supply so that you don't have 90% of the surveys done by 2% of the population comes back, in my opinion, to the kind of upside down economics of the exchanges, which are effectively saying you can do it for cheaper, pay people less, but expect more people to come in. The fundamentals simply don't align. They're inverted. So that's just my feeling that if we're going to increase the supply and the number of respondents who actually want to enter into surveys, either through panels or through exchanges, we have to actually change the economics, which don't actually align with Economics 101.
So I actually don't think the marketplaces have been completely pinnacle in moving the needle. I think it's created a lane of stuff people can't get done because the studies that are being successful in the exchanges are very easy, and that's just what people are picking. So the suppliers are picking the easy work because they want their people to complete the study. What I think is actually going to become really impactful is as you see DIY tools growing, right? That's where the surveys are being programmed and they're easier programming. So I can see in our DIY tool, our conversion rates from the click are 2-3 times higher, which means that respondent is getting to the complete, which is the trick to having a successful engaged panelist. So as we look at the model, right, historically, we've been having people take harder surveys for less money. Now as the DIY tools grow, they're gonna get more easy surveys and hopefully we do impact the CPI and they'll get paid more. So I think we're sitting on the cusp of an opportunity to really start to move the needle on fixing what is a supply issue.
Right. I agree. Of course, it depends which kind of DIY. You can do very bad research and very long, very bad surveys with DIY, right? But there's a new generation of DIY which makes it much easier to create good surveys. And I think that there's also some companies out there that are not even using exchanges because they've managed to have a vertical approach where they can create the surveys to be as short as they want. Instead of doing 25 surveys, they do 5 times 5 minutes. And they work directly with brands. And I think that some of them have terrific models in terms of engagement for respondents. Now, I think that it's going to be a point where it's going to be harder for them to scale. But I think the rest of the industry that is not following that model can use the exchange model and help it scale using the same mechanics.
I think the do-it-together model is the win because not everything fits. There's no one-size-fits-all. And you really need sometimes the complexity of some of the B2B work and healthcare work. Someone kind of has to hold your hand through it a bit, you know, and really understand what you're looking for and what you're driving towards.
Yeah. I'd like to pivot a little bit from this. I mean, I think we've all heard the Great Resignation. I'm sure that it's impacted every company here. Anybody I've talked to, it's been across the board. And so, what are you all doing to ensure mentoring is happening, or do you think that the industry is good with that? Where do you see kind of opportunities to do more?
Yeah, I can start. We had a pretty good year last year because we hired about 90 people, which was about 70% increase in the amount of hires that we had, our employee count. So we actually benefited, I think, from a great resignation in many aspects. But going to your point about mentoring, I mean, we also have a lot of training. We also implemented so non-research training, so business training. We actually have a certificate with the University of Wisconsin, which is everybody in the company gets a certificate for. It's almost like a mini MBA, and it's really understanding business and taking a different lens on that training approach. And so we're investing a lot in our employees, and not just in terms of benefits and increasing the salaries that we have to, or market adjustments, but also in this idea of training outside of research itself. So we're really trying to explore more how to actually create more value that's not necessarily all monetary value.
I'd love to see us put scholarship programs together here. We know Innovate was a sponsor, CUNY was a sponsor, Virtual Incentives is a sponsor. But I wish we had little scholarships for people to come, because these aren't cheap tickets and you can only send so many. So I'd like to see us do a sponsorship program of the younger generations to be able to come and have a special network and let them start to sort of cultivate the relationships like we have and start to grow them into that.
Yeah, I think I would love to see this exact panel, but with people under the age of, I don't be age, I was pick on age, but young leaders.
It's right after this.
They're after us.
It's right after this.
Yeah, those are tomorrow's leaders. You're only good for today. Yeah. That's why.
Yeah, but I agree with you. We need to get more of the newer generation of people in this part of the industry, but overall in the entire insights industry into these conferences. And I saw this week some of the folks from our company who came in, and just watching them interact with buyers, suppliers they hadn't met before. You can see the opportunities for growth. Because the great resignation, and we heard it on the first day of the initial panel. There's salary, there's benefits, like you're saying, but you can only do so much around those, and there are effectively limits to that. And so it's looking for those opportunities for people to grow, externally in the industry, but even within the company, and I think also just creating a culture where everybody sees what everyone's doing. So the people who are newer and in more junior positions are feeling that exposure also to the senior leadership, and not making them feel like they're like, oh, those people that are over here, and they just don't know what I'm doing, and they don't understand what my contribution is really, really important. So we do a lot. We're doing a lot of things also around, let's call it like more digital recognition within the company, where again through just using certain types of technology that exists not in market research to promote people's achievements, what they're doing, allow people to like comment on them and create more of like a social kind of, media internal nature of how people are just calling out like simple things like wins with clients or great efforts or just someone's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, we do a quarterly survey, and one of the key questions that we ask and keep a track of is, Dig Insights values the contributions that I make. And I've seen it, especially when you've gone remote, how that scores are going down.
Yeah.
And we've done a great job, I think, from a weekly perspective of having a team meeting and kind of bringing everybody up to date. But just recognizing people is like, even just a small shout out that they did a great job on a project is critical, because people do want to still feel valued. So I mean,
especially when they're not seeing each other in person hardly at all anymore. So you're sitting in your house, your basement, and you're like, I don't know, does anybody know I even exist, right? Like especially with again the newer generation who may never have that office experience that at least we've had in our careers. It's even for myself as being around for 25 years in the industry. Sometimes I sit in my house and I'm like, I don't know.
I mean, definitely on Monday morning I'm not going in.
Yeah, what's going on, right? So
I think too, we've built in leadership programs for our staff. We're very focused on volunteer work. We're focused on transparency, like you mentioned. But I also think it's like a simple thing. You just give them the why. We're doing this, and this is the reason why, and this is what the impact's going to be. And that's just teaching them business 101. No matter what, they can take that skill somewhere. And anyone who's ever worked for me, they know that I'm always trying to help them grow their resume. Even if they stay with us or don't stay with us. I'm a mama bear who wants them to always be okay down the road.
Yeah, and one more comment, like the great resignation. I think it's important as leaders that people will leave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you do.
Yep.
And when they leave, you actually have to be positive about it and be like, that's great. Like, I'm really thrilled. You have a great opportunity. Don't make it feel like it's a negative experience. People will remember that.
Yeah, that's true.
We're in too small an industry, as I mentioned, I think earlier, in many ways that we have to treat ourselves effectively as one. And I think in many one very large company, in which we're just obviously competing very competitive divisions within it. But I think how you treat people when they come in, how you treat people when they're leaving on their way out, goes a long way to building that relationship you have with employees who eventually, 10 years down the road might come back to you. Yeah. Either where you are or maybe you've moved on somewhere else.
Are you concerned at all? I mean, I'm not sure what your structures are right now, if it's like a hybrid approach for most of your offices or, everyone's full-time remote now, but with a lot of the new hires, I mean, also just the growth and like the amount of new hires a lot of companies are seeing right now, how to maintain kind of that culture and how to maintain that mentoring when everything has kind of become fully virtual to the point of like, now are you doing like special office events, like everyone comes in, trying to make sure that you still have that actual like in-person, which I think is still vital, session sometimes or?
So yeah, we're a remote first organization now, but we still have an office. So we spend a lot of money for no one to sit there, except me, 3 days a week. I kind of go in with 2 other people. And it's slowly coming back. There's some people who kind of need a break and they're coming back. But to your point, yeah, in-person events, especially for newer hires, we're trying to, as much as possible, have team events. So not necessarily full company events. Last year I had 80 people in my backyard for a barbecue. It was a cheap way, or cheapish, it wasn't that cheap, but a cheap way to have some people actually just see each other in person that they haven't seen in 2 years. And most of them hadn't had a haircut. They looked horrible, but it was fantastic actually seeing them all in person. So yeah, as much as you can, we need, and I think everybody can agree here in this, especially in this room, that mental health has really taken a toll. It's been one of the biggest eye-openers for me, just being a leader in the organization, just what the impact has been on our staff, especially people who had young kids at home and had it's been horrible. So as much as possible, taking them out of that environment, and just reminding them that we do have a culture to maintain is kind of a critical thing for us.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
Well, my structure is very simple. I'm actually an example of the Great Resignation myself, because I left a company of 16,000 and to fly solo last year.
Good for you.
Yeah. So I don't have much to contribute in terms of mentorship. It's all very easy. But I would say, I would just say, to me, mentorship has always been. I've never looked at it as something that the industry as a whole does. Although I've heard good things of the Wire program, for example.
It's excellent. Yeah.
But I don't know much about it. But that's something that I've seen as a manager as something important to do inside my company. And I think also as a new employee, that's something that you'd be looking after. I mean, when looking for your first job or your next job, I think that's the same way that's important to pick your boss is see what can be done in terms of mentorship.
Yeah, and I think as leaders, again, also I'm actually also part of the Great Resignation. Having moved to Schlessinger, after being at another company for 12 years, so I've actually now gotten the experience for the first time in my career starting a job also entirely remote.
Yeah.
And being honest, even though I've been in the industry for 20 years, I was like, how is this going to go? Just being in my house and not being able to walk over to the a colleague a few doors down to ask where do you print something, just like very basic stuff. And I used to always joke in the office, it takes people like 6 months to figure out where the washroom is. I'm like, well, now I'm working from home, so that whole aspect is gone. But what I found, which was a positive and something I've adapted to, is, and it's hard because as managers or leaders are we're very, very busy, our time is at a premium, is going that extra yard to make sure that all your employees who are remote can reach you anytime, or as much, or as reasonable as much anytime as possible. So they kind of feel like you're there, but even though you're not physically there. And it's a lot of extra work, but I think it's really important, especially for the more junior staff, to feel that virtual door open. And it's hard.
I think the video meetings have helped us a lot. We do meetings twice a week for half an hour. And it's literally just to check in on the people. How are you doing? Are you having anything bad happening? What's good's happening? What can I do to help you? And then you talk about personal life, and it's keeping everyone together because
water cooler conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've worked with outsource groups. I mean, we all have teams in other countries that we've been able, so we got that practice in a little bit. Yep. So we just sort of implement it over into the locals.
I think kind of, as a final conversation, because we're going to have the next generation kind of coming up soon, where do you hope that next generation of leaders in market research kind of take the field?
I'll tell you the one thing I'm sort of excited about, because I think the younger generation has more guts than we have. And I think they're going to push back. I think they're going to force the survey design to be better. I think they're going to actually maybe successfully get emojis and surveys as responses and start to look at people in the way they communicate. But in the way, that's how they communicate. So I think they're going to force it a bit. I think they're going to have gamification. I think they're going to make the surveys more interesting. And I think they care more. Like, they're going to really care about the respondent experience. And I think they're going to make a lot of improvements. I'm very hopeful for it.
I mean, we have emojis in our surveys, just saying.
And you're younger.
Actually, it's interesting because so my sister-in-law, I was telling the story last night about how she has a great personality for sales, and I actually told her, you should, going out of school, you should look at, getting into sales. And then eventually she's like, okay, I've explored sales, who should I apply to? And I was like, you should just apply, we have a job for sales, you should just apply for it. And she's been fantastic, but she's somebody who has never been in research before and now has been exposed to even the stuff that we do with our innovation platform. And she's like, wow, this is really interesting and fun. And I would never have thought about that before. And so, that next generation, I think it's really critical to make sure that it's relevant, it's actually engaging, it's actually fun for people to do, because, as Katie mentioned too, TikTok is really, it's so easy just to spend hours on TikTok. You get trapped in that. And you don't want people, the whole industry just to be taken over by people who are just spending time on TikTok. So yeah, it's going to be really critical, I think, for them to really advance the industry by showing how important it is to actually be able to provide that feedback.
And Minecraft.
And Minecraft, and Fortnite. I mean,
it's not just all about TikTok.
Not for you, but
I think next generation is fine. I mean, they have seen that the industry can change. I mean, when we started in this industry 20 years ago, we were told, it never changes. It's so conservative. And I think the next generation has already seen that it's changing, and a lot of these changes are coming from them already. I think I'm really not concerned. I don't even know what I can tell them.
I think that's a good point, though. You're saying a lot of the changes happen, especially when on the social aspect of it, has really been driven by that younger generation. And I think it's actually, they've already made some significant change.
I hope they don't listen to us. I hope they actually come in the room and challenge. Say, what you're doing makes no sense to me. Come in fresh, full of ideas. Don't be afraid, because a lot of us have been doing this maybe for too long. But and it's important to us, again, actually, as leaders, not to try to be the smartest people in the room. Let them tell us what is new. My kids sometimes talk to me about things. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. It sounds really cool, and they're like, Daddy, your work is so boring. But we want more people like that to come in and tell us how to change, because again, we move slow and they do not.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's a big part of what we have to be instilling in the new leadership or people in our
Tomorrow's leaders.
Tomorrow's leaders.
Tomorrow's leaders.
Yeah. With the ones that are coming up after this.
Yeah.
Is there any other advice that you would give to kind of the future leaders outside of don't listen to you or challenge you?
I mean, my advice is, and I actually just kind of recently, I mean, we've always been leaders in our organization, but we've never really, felt like we've been leaders in the organization, because we have just a great, group of people we, consider almost like a family. But the more we hire and the bigger we get, people do look at you and, do look at you as a leader in the organization. You have to lead by example. And my, big thing has been putting my family first. Spending a lot of time with them. I have 2 young kids, and I make sure to make time for family. I think, my advice to future leaders is, it's not. I mean, I've kind of learned it from them. It's not all about work, and there needs to be balance. And so the whole idea of work-life balance has really been a big thing from that. Really kind of been instilled by that generation who want that. And actually, I'm actually benefiting from it. Being, I want work-life balance. So I think it's been good.
I think the best advice is the biggest mistakes I've ever made when I didn't follow my gut. So make sure they have a really understanding of what's going on and what feels right to them and execute upon that. And if you do that, you know you're doing the right thing and they won't regret it later.
I would say, one, don't be afraid, don't think that you're too late. Don't be afraid that someone has done already the same thing before. Because, and I would say that's been one of my biggest mistakes in my career, is to think that a problem had been solved and that there was no point doing it over. And I have seen, like I thought in 2002 that it was too late to create a new panel company because it had been done already, right? How wrong was I, right? And so don't think that because there's already someone doing this or this that it's too late, because it's not. Execution is everything, and the web changes so fast that today's execution will be different tomorrow. And I'll take that with my second advice. My second advice is don't be afraid of the big guys, of the big group. Don't be afraid of the consolidation, because from my experience, it's usually a liability, not an asset, right? So that means if you're small and nimble, you're more likely to compete with the big giant.
Yeah, I think it was mentioned earlier, like find a mentor. You know, somebody that you can relate to, someone who shares, you know, similar values. I think the work-life balance, synergy. There's a few different ways to kind of look at that is super important. But find that leader, that person, because for me personally, like I've had a couple of those over my career, and hopefully more to come. But they can shape you. But find ones that, again, but share the values, because you don't want a leader too that you kind of fall into the wrong kind of way of thinking. So that's advice number one. Number two is what advice I say to even today to everybody is like be transparent. Don't be afraid, because you know, I think a lot of people, especially when you're younger, you're afraid because you know the big leaders, you don't want to come forward with new ideas. And probably earlier in my career, I was guilty of that, and I think it's something that can, you know, hold you back. And I think as a young person, you should you know, take that opportunity to bring forth those new ideas, because we need those.
Well, thank you all for your time, and we actually have a networking break right now hosted by Innovate Market Research, so thank you. I'll see you.
Thank you.